So we'll get that started. But so any thoughts and recommendations on what folks are doing regarding seat belts for their Austin-Heelys? I'll tell you. So I'm using lap belts in all mine. I don't have 3-point harnesses, and I don't have airbags.
I have a suggestion.
Please go ahead, Ken.
It's something that we've installed in several, using a retractable shoulder harness, a 3-point with the retractor. And we mount the retractor behind the seat down against the bulkhead. We make a special piece that goes up the inner fender well inside the interior panels that supports the loop or guide that goes over the shoulder.
Nice.
Because we find most people are, if you put a regular rigid 3-point system on, you can't move. We're used to the convenience and the comfort of the newer cars. And a lap belt really just holds the dead driver behind the steering wheel.
You're right.
So we've installed several of these. I have them in both my cars. It's really not a big deal. The thing is making up the bracket that goes against the fender wheel mounts on the regular factory shoulder harness pieces are mounts, and it runs up the side, and it just holds the top as about shoulder level.
So Ken, is this something that you're selling now, or just something you've designed and utilizing your customer cars?
We haven't, because there have been a lot of questions about the system.
Okay.
And we never really felt that there was any satisfactory thing out there. And again, one of the issues about getting into something like this is the liability.
Yeah.
So we've installed several. We haven't. It's probably something that could be sold, but I'm not sure that I want to get into that.
Understand. Do you happen to have any diagrams or anything like that, Ken, that you could share with the group, or not?
I don't. I can get them or get something made up. It's really simple.
You making these out of steel?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
So if there's interest, I can get some made up, get the information to you, or a sketch to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested.
That's good to hear. Others have experiences with 3-point systems on Heelys?
I installed the 3-point, not retractable. I could see Ken's idea, and I just put it, bolted it into on the 65. I have to go look. I think we have 2 bolts in the back, up in the back seat area. Then I think they went 66, 67 to 1 lug there, if I'm correct. But yeah, I like the 3-point, and I just think I got the belts from Moss years and years ago.
And is it retractable, Steve?
No, it's not.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Others have thoughts regarding 3-point belt systems?
I crashed 100S wearing a 5-point harness and only broke my thumb.
Okay.
Well, hopefully Dave won't be doing that.
Was that in the Tiger, Newfoundland, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Targa, Newfoundland, excuse me. Yeah.
Rather not talk about it.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Peter, I have a question.
Please.
What's the law on seatbelts, like in Massachusetts or whatever?
They have the year of manufacture and what was standard at that point in time. So they were not standard in Heelys, so you do not have to have them.
Okay. I have them on the front, but sometimes I put a person in the back and there's no seatbelt back there. And I just worry about that. Someone might pull me over, but okay, thanks.
Yeah, I've added one lap in my BJ8. I've added one lap belt that I used for my grandson. So I do have, so theoretically I'm legal with 3, but so I do have that attached to my BJ8.
You do
I
have
don't-
one.
Peter, I do believe that it was a federal law that all new cars had seat belts. I think the year was 75.
No,
Is that right, James? 75?
I think so.
Yeah, I thought I heard James Healy. Yeah, it was certainly after the production of the Healys. So
I thought it was 68, to be honest with you.
Well,
it may have changed by state, unless you think it was federal requirement, Ken.
okay.
Yeah,
So
but
state trooper pulls you over, he's gonna know the letter of the law, and after your car's a 60, whatever it is, and he's gonna say, oh yeah, you're okay. That's
presumably,
facetious.
yeah.
That's facetious.
Yep. No, Dave, you're absolutely right. That is the expectation. Yep. So Dave's other questions were things that you always want in the boot. So I always carry a spare coil. You may want to carry spare rotor, concealing points, condenser, depending if you're going with Pertronics or not. Again, if you are going with Pertronics, you may want to carry a spare Pertronics, because that goes, you're stuck. They're very reliable, but you don't have it's not like points that you can adjust to keep the car running. So that may be something you want to consider. So it's really those things that you can do on the side of the road easily. And again, also you're gonna have a fresh restoration. So presumably your fan belt and your all your hoses and whatnot shouldn't be a problem, but coils are historically a problem. Did you decide, Dave, what you're doing regarding a fuel pump?
Yeah, we're gonna have a dual fuel pump and the second one will be on a switch.
Okay, yep. Well, that's good.
Pete?
Other suggestions for Dave of things to?
I would suggest the fire extinguisher
Yes,
Yeah.
and they sell like a flat tire fix in an aerosol can.
right. Fix a flat, right?
Yeah, because getting a jack under the flat tire is pretty hard in a Healy.
Yeah.
The original jack barely works, so a scissors jack that you get from any new car might be an idea.
I would suggest flares and the orange triangle that you can put out on the road, since we find ourselves on the side of the road sometimes.
That's a good point, Steve.
Good point.
Somebody suggested hoses?
Well, Rich, this is gonna be a fresh restoration, so presumably you won't need hoses for a few years, but it's always good to have hoses, radiator hoses. Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I used to
Yep.
carry just the one that has the small piece that comes off for the heater,
Yep.
because that's not something you can typically find locally. If
Right.
that springs a leak.
That's true.
A
So
little bit
Dave,
of
one thing that I
screwball
find works
whiskey
well, if you put a round tray underneath the spare tire in the boot, it's a great place to store parts
Hmm.
Yep,
because it's all dead space.
great.
So get one that's the diameter of the inside of your wire wheel, and cut it down to the proper height, and you can store a fair number of parts in there. I would also carry tools.
Sure.
Typically best in a tool wrap or in a soft bag. I wouldn't put a big tool box in the trunk. There's not much room. So you want something that you can put in multiple places.
Right.
So I carry a couple of different wraps, and I carry a plastic thing of sockets, 1/2 inch and 3/8 inch ratchet sets, in case you get broken down on the side of the road.
Roll of duct tape.
Another thing that's good is bungee cords. I've especially with Healy's, I dropped an exhaust system once and had to bungee cord the exhaust system to the back bumper. So got me home.
Flashlight.
Yep, always a flashlight.
And a vice grip works well to isolate a leaky wheel cylinder, because each wheel has well, the front two have rubber hoses that you could put the pipe on if the caliper starts leaking.
Mhm.
And there's a rubber hose going to the rear axle. So otherwise you're kind of screwed.
Right.
Other suggestions for Dave on things to keep in your boot all the time?
Peanut butter whiskey.
I've encountered more failures of fan belts on long trips than anything else among the groups I've traveled with. I don't know why, but just unlucky.
Yeah.
Now, Dave, do you know, are you going with tubeless tires or tires with tubes?
Tubeless.
Okay. So that Fix-A-Fat will work with tubeless. It won't necessarily work with tube. So if you were going with tubes, you know, a spare tube would be a good thing to have.
Right. You know, at one of the meetings, Bob Abbott was saying that Fix-A-Flat was a great thing to carry. So yeah, I'm going tubeless.
Okay. Sounds good.
I wanted to ask Steve, going back to the 3-point belts, Steve, is it possible that you could take a snapshot of where that attaches in the back area?
Sure. Yeah, it attaches to the two little acorn nuts in the back, but
Oh,
I'll
okay.
go later and take a picture and shoot it to you, Dave.
Great, thank you.
Originally, there were, and I'm not sure if I still have them on my car. If someone had made a small aluminum bracket that would mount behind, there's the two acorn nuts on the 65 on the side in the back seat. So this bracket went under them, the acorn nuts went in, and it kind of bent out and then bent this way so you could put the seat belt attachment and the big heavy like 1/2-inch bolt on it. I
Right.
can't remember if I still have them or not, but I'll take a look later.
Moss sells them, they're not made out of aluminum, they're steel and then they're chrome. So they look very nice.
Maybe that's what it is. I remember them being kind of on the
Yeah.
shiny side. So
And they
it
work
could be
perfectly on
steel.
the two bolts with the acorn nuts on them on the earlier convertibles. My BJ7 has it on it. So everything forward up to where they went to the single bolt needs that bracket, and it works fine for the 3-point mount, for the high shoulder mount.
Yeah, I'll take a picture and send it to you, Dave. Or
Terrific,
Steve,
thank you, Steve.
Pete, I'll send it to you and you can send it around.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I must have got them from Moss. You know, they've been on the car for years, so.
So is
Okay.
that bracket as a part called basically a mount for a 3-point belt?
Yes.
Yeah, if you look in the seatbelt page, you'll find it in there.
Okay,
Maybe up in the A pages in the front of the book, where they have more like the accessories and stuff,
right,
rather than back in the upholstery section, back
okay,
in the back, in the front, in the A pages in the front, you'll find them.
great.
Pete,
Yeah.
I just, kind of looked it up. It said July 1st, 1994. Massachusetts was one of the last states to pass a seatbelt law. So
Okay.
that's when it was 1994.
Thanks,
Wow,
Norm.
that's late. 94? Wow.
Yeah, it was state by state. It wasn't a federal mandate, I don't
Yeah.
believe. So it,
Well,
But,
I
you know-
also checked on Google, and federally, whoever said it 1968 was correct.
that was James Healy. Yep.
That's right.
For Jim. Okay, well, great. So another question we have, Jack Daniel. Thanks for joining us, Jack. He's got a question regarding his steering box leaking. So he's looking for advice about replacing that you replace the seal And looking at, is there any different types of grease to use as a lubricant on the steering box? Anything else, Jack, you want to add to that, your question?
Yeah, it leaked out over the winter. I think it probably had been leaking a little bit before that. But I noticed a puddle of 90 weight gear oil, and I checked it today. It appears to be, all leaked out. So I guess the question is, Jim Began replaced, Jim, my neighbor up here in Maine. He replaced his seal many years ago, said it was a really tough job. And then everybody started saying, oh, you don't have to replace it. Just, you fill it with grease now. And so I went online, and there's, 50 people and 51 opinions, right? Of what kind of grease, and whether you should go with replacing the seal. And so I wanted to get opinion on that. And also Jim, Jim's a pretty handy guy, as you guys know. He
Yep.
said it's a bugger of a job. So I want to kind of find out about that and what's involved in it. Whether I should even try to replace the seal. The seal itself is pretty inexpensive. I checked today. I think it's about 11 to 12 bucks, something like that.
Well, we got 32 on this call, so you'll have 31 different opinions. not the 50 when you Googled
33 opinions.
So someone want to give Jack some opinions? Anyone?
I've never heard of anybody having difficulty putting what they call cornhead grease in them. Cornhead grease is a particular type of grease that doesn't tend to run out of things. I prefer to do the job right, and I take the bottom of the steering box out and take the arm off and replace the seals, but it's just my thing.
How do you get to that? Do you have to take the grill off? Some said you have to
take out the grill,
off.
you take off the steering wheel, you take everything off that is on the steering column. You don't actually have to take it right out. You can pull it out a little bit, then turn it on its side and pull the arm off it. Then you can actually take the top off the steering box if you want and pull the arm out. But it is a nasty job, and you may as well take it out for all the work it is.
Yeah.
So how many hours, Michael, is that typically?
I'd say it's an all-day job.
Okay. Bob, were you going to say something?
Yeah, we've used, and I recommended it on this call, cornhead grease. Go to a John Deere tractor store. It's their brand of product. Penrite makes a fixotropic grease that will cling nicely to the gears. And I just use it in a grease gun with a long rubber nozzle, and it'll fit right down into the steering box when you take the filler plug out, and pump about 25 pumps on your hand pump for your grease gun. And I've never had any of it leak out. It seems to lubricate just fine. It's not going to repair if you have bad gears or if the center spot on the steering box is worn, but it certainly will lubricate the box and save a lot of time and effort.
Okay, I didn't have any problems with the steering prior to this. I checked the record for the guy who had it restored, and there was no evidence that they had replaced the seal. I don't think they did anything with the steering box, but it's a 67, so however many years that is, it's held until this past winter. And it was in a semi-heated garage, but we had some really cold days, and I wonder if that is what maybe dried the seal out to the point where it finally gave. But I kind of like the idea of the what did you call it? Cornhead grease.
Yeah.
And we've got a John Deere dealership nearby. I've got a Kubota, but I'll go to a Deere and talk to them and get the product if they're the only ones who have it. So
I can't say
a lot of the guys in New Jersey have put that in. But Bob, couldn't you just take off the top of the steering box? There's only 4 small bolts, and then just push it in, with your hand, and then put the cap back on.
Well, it comes conveniently in a grease gun tube.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
All right.
All right.
It comes in a tube like that to use in a grease gun, and Yeah, you're right. There are only 4 bolts on top, but to get down in there through the bonnet without taking the grill out of the car, it's a little fiddly to get down there.
Mm.
Hard enough to get the drain or the fill plug out. You know, you've got to get down in there, use a universal and all that kind of stuff to get that out of there. And then the rubber hose with a needle on the end of it, that gets the grease down into it. Quite simply, I do it regularly for people if they bring in want to have an oil change. And I find that the steering box is empty. I just fill it with cornhead grease.
Mm.
Should anybody get into actually having the steering box out and doing the job, I've frequently found that leakage is not actually caused by the seal, it's caused by pitting of the shaft underneath the seal lip. So if you want to really do that properly, it's quite difficult. You got to get it ground and hard chromed. But CR do sell, or SKF as it is now, do have a seal that is the correct size, but a lot thinner, and you can put 2 of them in so that it seals in a different position on the shaft and the leakage problem is solved. But that's only if you've got the box out and are doing the job properly.
So Jack, it's probably worth giving that cornhead grease a try first.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. Yeah.
Gentlemen, I had the exact same issue, and that's exactly what I did. You guys had recommended, and all the issues I had, the tech manuals I read, they said use the cornhead grease, John Deere, and I got it on Amazon. You say you have a local dealership. The only issue I had was when I did pump it in, you had to make sure it got vented, so you get the air out of it, you know. So you just have to be a little patient with it, and it's a little tedious. But and I tried to do the starboard side, the right side also, but it didn't take much grease. But I tried to get in as much as I could, but it worked. I haven't had any issues. That's been a year now. I haven't had any issues with it at all.
Good.
Great, thanks, Dave.
Well, thanks, guys. I think I'll try the cornhead.
Any other questions, Jack?
No, that was it.
Okay, great. So Carl J, and I guess Carl, you said you're new to the Healey world, so welcome.
Yes.
And I know you said you've had a few other classic cars in the past, but Jack has a 63, excuse me, Jay has, Carl, excuse me, I apologize. Carl has a 63 BJ7. It's got some questions regarding the overflow in the radiator. So is it when you said you're getting this overflow, is that are you filling it all the way to the very top and then you get some push out and overflow after you run the car for several minutes or a time?
Yeah, it's down now, Peter, you know, it's down probably an inch from the top now. And after like a 20-minute drive, I'll get, when I stop, you know, into the garage, I'll get probably a cup or so of coolant overflowing, you know, just out the overflow. And I didn't know if there's any, you know, I haven't done anything with the thermostat or anything like that. You know, it has a new radiator cap, new radiator hose. But again, I just got the car last July and I haven't, you know, done much with it.
You know, I find with my BJ8, and so similar radiator than what you have in your BJ7, Carl, is it gets to a level I cannot fill it all the way to the top. You know, mine comes down slightly and it pisses it out, and it runs fine. I'm running at 180 degrees without any problem, but it will not. Maybe in mine will not. I cannot fill it all the way to the top. It always runs slightly lower. So you see if you look inside, you can see the cores of the radiator. It sits just above that level there.
Okay.
But there's certainly room to put more in. But it just I put more in and it pisses it out.
Okay. So it's fairly common.
Yes.
Mine's the exact same way.
Same thing.
Same
J7.
thing.
Like Pete said, just cover the tops of the tubes when you look down in there, and it'll seek its own level and it won't hold any more than it wants.
Okay.
Pisses it out if you put too much in. I would suggest maybe stopping at a discount auto parts store and buying a infrared thermometer, battery operated thermometer. You just squeeze the trigger and it'll read the temperature. So you can read the temperature of the thermostat or the hose or the radiator itself, just to compare and see what the gauge up on the dashboard is reading when the thermometer tells you that at the thermostat, the engine's only 160 degrees and your thermometer is reading 190 degrees, then just adjust your thinking to that. That's all.
Okay. Well, thank you.
And Bob, those are any typical auto parts place have those?
Yeah. Yeah, $12 or $14. I mean, they're not high tech. They're not really expensive. They operate on a couple of AA batteries and they can just continue to work even when the little infrared dot stops working. The thermometer part of it still functions. Still.
I think Harbor Freight has them too.
Thanks, Ted. So Carl, just curious, on your temperature gauge, what are you reading at you?
Probably
180, 190?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
That's when I.
Not higher than that.
Right.
Okay. Now, again, we haven't had really, now you said you've had the car for a year. How about in the hot weather? If you're, 80 degrees in traffic, how's it run then?
Yeah, when I first drove it a fairly substantial amount, it seemed to overheat, but it's odd, it's just, again, it's different. I've had an MG for many, many years. It's so different than that. So I stopped one time, it was like over, probably 200 or whatever. And I just waited for it to cool down and, continued driving, but I never got anything, it's funny. It's still, I can almost take the radiator cap off. It's not that hot. And I'm getting this, this overflow. So that's good if it's typical. So
Yep.
no, that's good. It's more just getting confident with the car and, realizing that that's part of it. Then
Right.
Can I add one other quick question?
Please, absolutely.
Comment again, sort of new to I have, some oil coming out of I guess it's their transmission where you have that split cotter pin.
Yeah.
And I guess that's something that's fairly common as well. But, I didn't know when does that become problematic, if it's a lot.
Do you have any idea what you have for oil in your transmission?
I'm not positive, Peter. I can look at, I had it serviced and I can look it up, but I'm not positive what's in there.
On these calls, we've had a number of discussions as it relates to, the manual will tell you use straight 30 weight oil in your transmissions. Other people have some other recommendations regarding that. But that may be some of the reason. So how much oil is it leaking through that pin?
I'd say again, after the 20-minute drive, I might have a couple of tablespoons.
Okay.
Quantify it like that.
Carl, what's your oil pressure like?
Would it be 40? Does that sound right?
40 to 60. Depending if you're under load and how if the car is warm or not, tends to get lower as the temperature, the car heats up.
Mm-hmm.
Is the split pin you're talking about, that's really the bell housing.
Yes.
And that could either come from the rear main seal on the motor or the gasket around the input shaft of the transmission. So if the oil is dirty, it might be coming from the motor. If the oil is relatively clean, because the transmission oil doesn't really get all that dirty, I don't think.
Right.
Might be coming from the trans. But they're the two areas that it could come from.
Mm-hmm. So it does appear to be dirty, dark, black color. So that I just watched, the dipstick is what you would recommend, or, is the seal a big deal? Or does it even have a seal?
They're both big deals.
Yeah.
You got to pull the gearbox.
Okay.
The rear main seal is really hard.
I think Steve, you're talking about the engine.
Yes.
Yeah, because the engine oil gets back in there. I think if you're concerned about transmission and the amount of oil you talk about for leakage, sounds excessive for transmission leakage, sounds more like engine oil. So
I would say it is.
use a dipstick and check your transmission and make sure that that's not going down like crazy. But
Okay.
there's not really much internal pressure in the transmission to push oil out to that volume. So it sounds more like an engine oil issue. Plus, like they said, it's, if it's dirty, chances are it's from the engine.
Right.
And do you know what you're using for engine oil, Carl?
Would it be 20 weight 50?
That's hopefully that's what it is.
Yes.
And again, it's better to use a oil with zinc.
Yep.
ZDDP. I experienced, with my 100 when I first had that motor built. Originally, it was running Castrol 2050, but it was leaking like a sieve. I went to Valvoline VR1 2050 racing oil, which is ZDDP, and it reduced the leaks significantly.
Okay.
So
thank you.
So that was an experience I had, and that was with a freshly built motor for my 100. So ever since, that was 2007. Ever since, I've always used oil with ZDDP. So and again, a lot of different manufacturers out there are making it right now, but it's with heavy zinc additive. So that is now, I've heard some people use synthetic, and generally it's not recommended to use synthetic oil because again, it has a lower viscosity. So that could cause that was the reason I asked for the question regarding what engine oil you're using, Carl.
Right.
So that would be something to look at too.
Thank you.
But they do leak, so that's don't feel
You're not alone, Carl.
Yeah.
Right.
And Carl, the way I feel, oil is relatively inexpensive. Trying to take the transmission out and do the seal or the rear seal on the motor, that's big bucks.
Right.
I just keep adding oil and that's
Okay.
it.
Thank you.
Well, the one good thing is you get a BJ7, so removing the interior out of a BJ7 is a lot easier than a BJ8.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about that. But I would check it, as Ken mentioned, you check the dipstick. It's on the left-hand side on the transmission tunnel. And there's a dipstick there, so you can and see what see what the transmission oil, what level it's at.
Okay.
So again, that's easier to get to again on a BJ7 than it is on a BJ8.
I've got a BJ7, and initially I had a issue with oil leak, a lot of oil leaking out of it. And I think what helped, I strongly believe what helped was getting the venting system straightened out on the valve cover. Now, I don't know if you've checked that out. I know you just got the car or whatever, but that's something worth checking out. Make sure that I know me and Peter and Mike Salter had talked about it, that T piece that goes down could be too far down, causing pressure to increase inside the engine casing. And also I installed a PCV valve, a PCV system on it, so it will vent properly. And that's something to look into, that's all.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for your question, Carl. And thanks for joining. We appreciate you.
This is awesome. Thank you.
Well, again, feel free to ask any sort of question. As you can see, we get lots of different varieties of questions. Jim Constantine, are you on? Okay, you're not. I believe our president, Bruce Ketchin's on. Bruce, you with us?
Yes, I am, Peter. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So he's in the middle of the process of building up a fresh motor for his 106. So you want to share your question, Bruce?
Sure. This is part of a multi-year restoration of a early Longbridge BN4 engine. And I sent this out to a machine shop and had all of the machine work done, including boring and honing of the cylinders and polishing of the crankshaft, regrinding of the cam, all new bearings installed, and in the process now, the engine has just gone back in the car, and I am getting ready to crank it over for the first time. I have filled the crankcase with 20 W50 oil that has it's the VR1 Valvoline oil that's been highly recommended. And I have a proper level there, and I'm working right now on the fuel system to get that ready. I do have the electrical system disconnected, and that needs to be changed completely. But my plan was to get this thing, at least crank it over and get it to fire. And before I did that, I've read several places where it is possible to prime the oil system in some cars that have a different oil pump arrangement than we have in the Austin-Healeys. And so, absent a way to prime, possibly by pumping some oil into one of the oil ports, I was thinking about cranking this engine over with the spark plugs removed, and see if I could get some oil pressure. Now, I've done that on 2 occasions now, where I ran the starter for about 10 seconds and allowed it to wait a short period of time, and then I ran it for another 10 seconds, and there was no oil pressure whatsoever. So I'm wanting to be a little bit careful with this and looking out for some suggestions or advice from people who've been through this before.
First thing I would say is, did you pre-fill the oil filter?
Yeah, about half fill. I
Half
did
fill.
put a spin-on filter on this car, so it does not have the original, and that mounts horizontally. So I filled that as much as I could fill it without it pouring out when I installed the filter.
Just the experience that I have, I would say that cranking for 2 lots of 10 seconds probably wouldn't be enough to prime the system. I don't know, you've heard the same thing, Ken? Would you think that? Ken back?
Or Bob?
Yeah, that may be enough, but
Maybe enough. It's
whatever
on
it
the
takes.
borderline, eh?
Yeah, whatever it takes, as you say, about 10 seconds. I wouldn't crank it forever.
No.
Crank it for a few seconds, let it rest, crank it again, and it should, 2 or 3 times you should be able to build oil pressure.
One trick that I've used, it's a bit slow, make up a little adapter that goes where the oil pressure gauge connector goes.
Right.
Yes.
And you run it, you get a long piece of tube with a funnel, it can be 5 feet above the engine, and slowly but surely add oil through that thing, and it will actually push oil through the entire oil system. Sort of primes everything. If you really want to do it right, that gets oil into everything. Then you put the gauge connection back on, and you usually get oil pressure as soon as you crank it.
Oh, good idea. I was thinking about putting oil in a grease gun and pushing it in through that opening.
Yeah, that could
Well, an oil squirt can would work.
Okay.
Rather than a grease gun,
Okay.
because you need a small tube or line, like Mike said, to get into where the oil pressure sender comes out.
Yes. Yep.
But it does seem to help a lot. I've done that most of the engines that I've done recently, and they seem to kick oil pressure almost as soon as you crank them after that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very much.
So I do have a question, Bruce. So you mentioned you're using, the 2050, but, for you engine builders, Ken, Bob, and Michael, should he be using break-in oil first before running, that 2050 with ZDP?
Problem with starting any new engine is these days is the camshaft. A lot of people have problems with the cams. I use Lucas break-in oil. There is a word on the street that should run the engine at about 1500 RPM for 20 minutes once you do get it started. But if you know how quickly a crankshaft spins around inside a crankcase, I don't think, even at idle, there's a hell of a lot of oil flying around inside that crankcase. I don't personally think it makes a lot of difference, but I actually do it just to be sure. So 20 minutes at 1500 RPM, and you hopefully will have broken in the camshaft, but that's the big risk, I think, these days.
I used liberal quantities of this Permatex red engine build oil on everything when I put it together, on top of the lifters. I put it on top of the camshaft. I obviously put it in the bearings, both the connecting rod and the mains. And so I've done as much as I can do there, and I don't know how long that lasts in the cranking process, whether it stays in there or. So
if you think about it, the camshaft rotates sort of 20 times a second. So it doesn't last very long.
No. All right. Well, I like your idea of the priming method. I think we'll give that a try. You don't happen to know the thread on the connection, the rigid connection where it goes to the flexible connection coming off the block, what sort of a thread that is?
I think you'll find that if you take the little adapter out, if I remember correctly, an 1/8 pipe, a taper pipe, will screw into there quite tightly. Does that sound right, Ken? Do you remember?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, 1/8 pipe taper. Yep. Well, you can get a little nipple of that takes a tube, that will work.
Right. So that's where it goes right into the block. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, we typically use, we're using all Brad Penn products, but we use break-in oil on that also. Use a cam assembly lube. And like Michael said, the first several minutes is the most critical for the camshaft. And we've had a lot of cam failures in the past where people put engines together and didn't spend the 20 minutes at this essentially a high idle speed to break in the cam. It seems like a waste, but you let the thing cool down after that and you can go about your business. But it's that first 20 minutes that's really critical. And one of the things you don't want to do with a new one is destroy a new camshaft and set of lifters. And the pressure of the lifter, the tappet on the camshaft, is the highest pressure point inside the engine. So that's what you want to be careful and take care of.
Thank you.
But again, I think what both from Michael and Ken is recommending break-in oil, Bruce. So you may want to consider using that first before filling it up with the 2050 ZDP.
One engine that I have had problems with was a 4 that chewed up a cam. And in order to break the cam in on that engine, I actually took the inner valve springs out and ran it only with the outer valve springs, which decreases the pressure on the cam quite a bit. And then after I'd done that, I found that I didn't need to put the inner valve springs in anyway, because the thing will still rev to the red line.
Interesting.
And then break-in oil, use it for a couple 100 miles.
Yep.
Is there anyone other than Brad Penn that's making that?
Yeah, Lucas
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Yep.
I think Joe Gibbs makes a break-in oil I used in one of my motors at one time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that probably would be a safe thing to do, Bruce, before running, the 2050 full time.
What is the grade of the break-in oil? Do you know? The weight?
Mine's 2050, the stuff I use.
Yeah, the Penn grade is 30, straight 30.
Oh, okay. And Bob, what do you recommend? Because I know that's what we used in my BJ8 motor when you rebuilt that 2 years ago.
We use 30 weight break-in oil, Brad Penn grade oil. And it does have the zinc in it. And it's that initial spin of the camshaft that the zinc is so important, because it is a high pressure lubricant that they've taken out because of catalytic converters. It used to be in oil all the time, where all manufacturers had zinc, but they've slowly reduced the amount of zinc in the oil because it's very hard on catalytic converters, to the point where most motor oils, unless it says that it's a racing oil or a classic car oil, will not have the zinc compound in them any longer, the ZBDP that you're talking about. But I think, Bruce, you want to be sure that whatever you use for break-in oil, whether it's 2050 or straight 30 weight, does have the zinc in it for that break-in period.
Would it pay to buy some zinc additive and put that in as well?
I don't know. I've never tried that. I've never done that. Where you already have oil in your new motor, it may be okay, but I don't want to be the one to tell you yes or no.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what the difference is between the chemistry of break-in oil compared to the regular oil. And most of those oils have a fair amount of zinc in them, and that's the most important thing, I think, for the camshaft. But as long as you stay with a break-in oil of any of the companies, I would think that it has a significant amount of zinc in it. I think that's a key ingredient to that.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Anything else?
No, well, I'll give you an update. I was not planning to run this for 20 minutes at 1500 RPM, so I will definitely need a bigger fuel supply than what I was planning to start this with. But I have a new tank, as you know, Peter, and I'll be connecting that up. So
one other thing, Bruce, don't be tempted to run it without an exhaust system on it. Because you run it without an exhaust system, you can't hear if the engine is making some nasty noises.
Good point. Good point. Are you a mind reader as well, Michael?
Yeah, it's a part-time job.
Okay. So I see Rob Moore's with us, and Rob's been he's in the process of reviving his BT7, and he's got some updates for us and some questions. So you want to give us some of your updates from coming back from Vermont and working on the car, Rob?
Sure. Thanks, Pete. Last time we were on quite a few months ago, I had an ignition issue and I couldn't get any spark to the spark plugs. I did talk to Rob Medovich and ordered some things from him as Bob Abbott had suggested, and lo and behold, it fired up and I actually got some spark. Blew out a fair amount of bird seed out of the exhaust system that apparently the mice have been putting in there, but it did fire up. My issue now is that I'm not getting fuel to the carburetors, and I had put in a new facet pump, and I had actually bled that system, or I was able to get fuel pouring out at the filter that I installed near the carburetors. But now all I'm getting is about an inch or so of fuel in the fuel filter, but it's not filling up the filter and then going into the carburetors. So I'm trying to figure out if I have an air leak on the tank side of the fuel pump, or if folks have ideas as to what else might be going on.
Are you looking at just the fuel filter, or are you actually checking inside the carburetor? Because a lot of those filters don't totally fill up, even though fuel is going through them.
I was actually just looking at the fuel filter, but it would only run, I was using starting fluid, and it would only run long enough to burn off that starting fluid. It would not run other than to pop off.
So sorry, I missed that there. Are you hearing the fuel pump tick?
Yes. Yeah.
And if you have it disconnected from the going into the carburetors, does it run? Does it run clearly, or completely, Rob?
It did. Before I had the ignition issue, I had put in the fuel components, and I did get it to run through at that point. I haven't tried it since for probably 6 months or something.
What kind of fuel pump is it?
It's a facet.
It is, see, a facet will run continually.
Right,
It won't stop like an SU.
right. It runs pretty much continuously.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's normal.
But it's not getting to the carburetors. Is that what you're saying, Rob?
right. So I can get the engine to pop by spraying some starter fluid into the carburetors. And I can see fuel in that filter that's close to the, where it goes into the carburetors, but it won't continue to run. So I'm assuming it's not getting fuel.
Were
Pull
these
the top off the
carburetors,
float bed.
yeah, were these carburetors on there for a long time? Maybe the needle and seat are stuck shut.
Yeah, I mean, the car has been sitting for 20 plus years.
Yeah. Probably good to take the top off the carburetor and see what's inside, see what's going on there. You can always just tap on the line going into the carburetor, see if the needle and seat let go, and then maybe fuel will go in.
Well, actually, now that you mention that, Ken, I did, at one point, I had fuel blowing out the overflow valves in the manifold. Because I did have something sticking in the car, but where Michael made a suggestion, I took it apart and the float was sticking, I believe. Is that what you're thinking about? Or you're thinking actually in the carburetor itself?
The needle and seat inside the carburetor itself.
Okay,
I mean, it sounds like you have fuel to the carburetor and the engine runs without the carburetor. So it sounds like the whole problem is the carburetor.
carburetors. Okay,
One thing that I found on a BJ that had been sitting for many years was a bit weird. The needle had dropped out of the pistons in the carburetors. Both needles had dropped out of the pistons. So if you took the suction chamber off and pulled the piston out, the needle was sitting in the jet.
okay.
It don't run like that.
No. Okay, appreciate those suggestions.
So have you done any cleaning of the carburetors or carburetor cleaner or anything like that, Rob?
No, because I didn't have spark until,
Right.
literally last week. So, yeah, it's one thing after another, which
So
is
you're making progress.
slowly, very slowly, Peter.
Yep.
Good thing you're a patient man.
No.
Well, the car is 200 miles away from where he lives. That's part of
Right.
the problem.
Right. So once I get done swearing and kicking at it, then I just drive back to Massachusetts and call it a day.
Did you drain all of the old gas out of the tank? Totally.
I did, and I put in a new aluminum tank.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I was being simplistic in thinking that maybe I was drawing air on the tank side of the facet pump, just because some of those connections seemed a little not as tight as I would have liked them, the metal connections.
Well, take the line off the carburetor or line going up to the carburetor and put it in a coffee can or something and see what you get.
Right.
Just run it for a few seconds.
Right. That'll tell me. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they'll tell you if what's coming up. I had to think it was with my Sprite when I first got it, but the hard line fuel line coming from the fuel pump up to the motor. And again, the car had been sitting for a while. It wasn't getting enough fluid through. The car died on me 5 times before so I replaced that hard line with fuel line coming from the back up to the motor to the carburetor, and it was the hard line fuel line that was my problem. And again, that was on a Sprite, but maybe that's a problem too. But again, as Ken pointed out, if you can put that line into a can and see how much it's flowing out of there when you turn the pump on, that would tell you is the issue in that line from the facet pump coming up, or is it in the carburetors itself?
Right. Nope, that makes sense. Then I have to go backwards or forward, one or the other, right?
Yep. Yep. So you also had a question regarding classic car insurance, and I know you said you saw that that BS call we had several years ago, I guess it was February of 2021 regarding that. So clearly classic car insurance is the way you want to go. You don't want to use a regular policy like you'd have, with stated value, but the Grundys and the Haggertys of the world, I think they do real good work.
Yeah, I was trying to get a sense if people were willing to share as to which companies they were using and whether they were working with a broker or just working directly with the insurance company themselves. I mean, I believe it was the rep that was on with Rick was, I believe, Steve Mollahan. I think, isn't he?
He was an agent up in Cape Ann area.
Right.
Yep.
And he spoke very well about the company that he seems to broker.
Well, I think he was
for.
representing Haggerty.
Haggerty, exactly.
And I use Haggerty too. So on all 7 of my classic cars, I'm using Haggerty. I happen to use it through my local insurance agent because he has all my other insurance. But I'd feel fine if I went direct. But
Okay.
I happen to do that because I have it all bundled together.
Yeah, so I was just trying to get a sense as to what other folks have been using. I mean, right now I use State Farm and I've just got comprehensive on the Healey because it hasn't moved in 20 years. But I'm optimistic, Pete, so I'm thinking ahead to get like real insurance.
Yeah, no. Well, and again, depending on, stated value, I would say, for, let's say $50,000, you can probably get a policy for like $300 a year. It's not a lot of money. It's nothing like what you pay for your insurance on your daily drivers. It's much cheaper.
Yeah, Pete, Dan Verdier here.
Hi, Dan.
With the classic car insurance, an advantage over regular insurance is for a few bucks a year. If you total the car, according to them, you can get to keep the wreck. So for a few bucks, gives us another part source in the club.
Hopefully mine won't become another parts source, but I hear you. Yeah, I was trying to get I didn't know whether people had experience with other vendors other than Haggerty with Grundy, or I've heard some horror stories about a couple of them. But I do know a lot of folks do seem to use Haggerty.
Hey, Dutch, I see you're on the call. Have you, because isn't yours car with Haggerty? Have you had any luck since your car was hit after Enclave? Dutch, I think you're on mute. If you're still online. Anyone else have recommendations on classic car insurance providers?
I know Haggerty is very popular and just main consensus, but I use Geico. They have a subsidiary that actually specializes in classic cars. It's very reasonable. Now, I've never had an issue. I don't know. I like Geico as far as the service and everything on my other vehicles, etc. I haven't had an issue, but they actually have a subsidiary that they deal with for for old cars, antique cars. It specializes in that sort of thing.
So, David, I'm going to see you in a Geico ad coming up now.
You can save 15% on your next car.
Just listen to the gecko.
Yeah, that's right.
I use Haggerty on the Healey, but I also use Progressive on my motorcycles, and it's all handled through my local insurance company that I have my house with and everything else.
Yeah, your agent. Yeah.
Yeah, which has kind of surprised me, but that I didn't have to go direct, and it's been fine. No issues at all. And it's very, as you say, Haggerty, the first year I got the car, I insured it through my regular insurance company. And then the next year I went with Haggerty and it cut it in more than half.
Right. Well, that's good to know that you can use. I didn't know if my insurance agent would write Haggerty and classic car insurance, but I should check that out. Yeah.
I just put insurance on my car and was speaking with Haggerty direct and got a quote from them. And then I have a buddy that's in the insurance business. He's an agent, and I talked to him and he can write the policy through Haggerty, and there's no difference in the premium, which I was happy. So I'm happy to give him the business and he can represent me.
Right. I have a similar situation. I have 25 cars insured, and
we're also a Haggerty repair center. And I play golf in the Erie Golf League, and the guys recommend going with collector car insurance. So I use one of my friends in the Erie Golf League who writes for Haggerty, and I have my cars insured through Haggerty. And being a repair center, what we found is if there's a supplement, if there's a difference in the estimate, they're very generous in paying the bills. We never have to struggle. There's another one or two companies that we really hate to deal with, and I used to have cars with them. I said I would never recommend them. And it's one of them is a major company that, you know, I would tell you in private, but it ended up where that particular company increased the values of my cars each year. And I bought, in fact, it was a Healey. I had it apart for brake system and I didn't get a bill. I called, I said, what's the problem? I'm not getting billed, because they like their money right away. And they said, the value of your total collection is too big to have in one location. So I said, so if I put 6 of them in a barn somewhere and the others on the garage in the back of my house, that's better. From the standpoint of total loss, yes.
Wow.
So, you know, you got to do a little shopping, but Haggerty, it's a little more expensive than some. There are a lot of good companies out there, but I have no problems with Haggerty, and we deal with them a lot. I have 4 cars right in there, right in the shop right now that are Haggerty claims.
And then, you know, as an HCA member, Rob, you can get a 5% discount on Haggerty too.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great input. Yeah, because it all comes down to it's nice to have lower premiums, but the rubber really hits the road if you have a claim, right?
Right. Absolutely. Dutch, are you on yet?
Peter,
just curious what your status of your claim may be. Go ahead, Ken.
The other thing about Haggerty you can do, and I have Haggerty on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6 vehicles. You can join what they call the Haggerty Drivers Club, and it's like an AAA, and you can get, you know, towing service if you break down, and I think it's like $70 a year extra. So
look in AAA.
Yeah, look into their what they call the Haggerty Drivers Club, and I've been super happy with them for 25 years.
That'll
they got
work well for
they got
me,
a quarterly magazine with that too. It's a nice thick classic car magazine that comes out too, Rob.
Yeah.
That'll work well for me, Ken, huh?
I'm at your service, Mr. Salter.
Anything else, Rob?
No, thanks for the input. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Jack Tierney, are you on the call? Jack's a new member, and he's and I'll share my screen. He's in the process of trying to sell a Colorado Red BJ8. You guys seeing my my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so this is and again, Jack is a new member, and so I believe it's a 67 BJ8. He said it's been sitting for a number of years, so you can see the garage behind that. But if anyone's interested in a Colorado Red BJ8, let me know, and I'll get you in touch with Jack. Jack is going to put it out on our website, our Healey Marketplace on AHCA, as well as what we have in New England. But I'll let you know on that. So Rich, anything else? I know you're trying to sell your Concourse wire wheels. Any luck you're here? Did you get that on the marketplace now? You any luck with that?
I haven't. I got one inquiry, but he wasn't really serious about buying them. He decided he probably had enough points to go for gold Concourse without it. But
okay.
But I have them. They're off. I have my new Michelin XASs on the car now, and so I've only had it out once so far. But They
Do you
seem to
notice a
be doing
difference
fine.
with new radials compared to you had with bias plies?
I can't say that big, I've noticed a big difference because I haven't run the car that much. So,
Okay,
and I haven't really run it at high speed, so. But they seem to run fine, so.
great.
What
Good.
size are the XASs?
They're the 165 15s. Yeah,
So the original size.
original size, yeah.
Okay.
I decided to go with that. I didn't want a bigger tire on there.
Now, did you end up going with tubes or tubeless?
Tubes,
Okay, yeah.
so.
Must have come into money, did you?
That's why I've got to sell the other tires. Yeah. You know, it was interesting. I bought them from Longstone in England. And I had them sell me the tires in British pounds, and then my credit card did the exchange, and it was a lot cheaper than buying them from them in US dollars.
Really?
There was like 20% difference.
Wow.
So I would say if anybody's buying something from the UK, it's probably cheaper to have your credit card do the exchange.
Now, does your credit card charge you a fee for that exchange? Do you know? Rich?
It was really small, tiny. I think
Okay,
the credit card I use that doesn't even charge a fee.
okay, that's good. Yeah, because some of them vary with that.
Yeah.
I have a comment on tire size. You mentioned 165 is the original size. And Michael, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. The original size was 590/15.
That was the bias tire. Yeah.
That's correct. But the circumference of the 590/15 is actually bigger than a 165.
It is.
It's the equivalent to a 175 that you can't buy.
Yeah, that's correct.
What I'm using and recommend is a 180/70, 185. Now I got it screwed up. I'm using a 70 profile tire, and I think it's 185/70 on for Healey. It's the exact circumference of the original 590/15, but it's about 3/8 of an inch wider than the original tire, which still looks skinny compared to the tires we see today. So what I'm getting at is if you're running a 165, your speedometer is off by a hair. A lot of everything that's affected by the circumference of the tire is not what the original was. A lot of people use them. To me, it looks too small, but it's a very common tire for people to use because it's easy to get. People don't make skinny tires anymore. They're just hard to get. But they are actually smaller than the original tire.
Yeah, they're 4/10 of an inch on the diameter, smaller.
Yeah.
On the diameter.
On the diameter. So it's 2/10 of an inch on the radius.
Yeah, but your tire sees
the Dunlap bias tires.
Yeah.
Right. But your tire, but the tire actually sees the circumference of the road. That's the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a very good comparison chart on that Longstone site.
Yeah, there is.
Dave Berube, Dave's got a generator. He's looking to, if anyone is interested in a generator, I'm going to put it up on the picture of it. Dave, do you have the numbers you have from that generator you're looking to?
Yeah, I do, Pete.
You thought it was a 59, right?
Yeah, the numbers are the 22530A 559.
So it's probably May of 59.
I think so, Pete. I'm not certain, but yeah. I believe, Ron, you had one out there on the website as well that was already rebuilt. This is, as you can see.
No, Rich had one.
Oh, was it Rich? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rich, that's right. Me and Rich, we corresponded. This is Dave Burley. You know, and I'm not trying to cut you off. I just have this in my basement, it's been kicking around, and I would rather have somebody have it if they want it, and instead of just throwing it in the scrap iron. So I don't know anything about it. Don't know whether it works. I did take
Because you have a BJ8, so this did not come off your car, right, Dave?
It did not. I had a 62 car that I had, and I got a parts car with it. And along with the parts car, there was a whole lot of stuff just piled into the car.
Yeah.
This generator was in that car, not it wasn't on the engine or anything. It was sitting inside. So, you know, I think that was a 61 parts car, I believe I was told. And so I'm not certain.
And does it spin?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
No, not frozen.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Anyone interested in, you're in Connecticut, right, Dave?
That is correct.
Okay. And you're looking to donate this to anyone, right?
That is correct.
So free of charge. Anyone interested in a, probably a 59 generator from Dave Berube in Connecticut? Oh, the science is deadly.
Yeah, I didn't think there'd be much interest.
Hey, Dave, one suggestion is that you might want to check the pulley on this generator. I believe there was a change in the dimension of the width of the belt, and that may be a pulley that somebody would be interested in having. They may want the whole generator, but correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think they went from 3/8 maybe to a 1/2 inch at some point on the width of the belt on the generator, the early generators.
Yeah, late BJ8s had the wider belt, but that pulley is applicable to everything up to all 6 cylinders up to late BJ8s, I think.
And then you also have an intake manifold.
Right. I'm assuming that's from an earlier car as well. Again, it came out of that parts car I got. It was just a bunch of stuff in there, and this intake was on it. I guess looking at the intake, Peter, you're gonna be able to bring that up as well.
Yeah, are you seeing my screen? I'm sharing right now, Dave.
Yeah, but not the picture.
Not the picture though. We're seeing your email page.
Yeah, who is that? Who is that woman?
Yeah. I wasn't gonna say anything.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one other one, Pete. What are those tubes on the intake? They're not the. You can see on this picture here the drains on the ends, right? But then there's 2 other black tubes coming out. Actually, I think there's supposed to be 3. What are those for? I don't see that on my BJ8.
Are you talking about this right here, Dave?
Yes, correct. Right. Yes.
I'm not sure. Anyone have any thoughts what those are?
Hey, Pete, is there another picture that I did send you another one? I think it's a little better. You can see those, I'm calling them cords, but they're not. They're tubes.
Okay, let me put that email. So as I'm looking for that, anyone else have any other questions they're going to want to discuss tonight? So Ted, Stan, you had a question about your cold air box?
Yeah, I feel kind of silly after listening to all these serious questions, but I've got that M conversion on my 100, and the cold air box is rectangular. The adapter to the hose is circular, and the hose apparently fits inside the adapter, but there's nothing to secure it. And it's sort of niggly thing. It comes out fairly often and just hangs there. So I'm wondering if anybody knows how to get that hose to stay in that adapter bracket.
Hang on, you're talking about the hose where it goes onto the air box?
Yeah, the cold air hose, yeah.
Originally the hose goes on the outside of the cold air box, and there was like a band clamp, a very narrow band clamp went right around it.
I wondered about that, but I'd have to struggle to get that hose over the on the OD of that.
Yeah,
I can try, but that makes sense.
What sort of hose is it? Is it Copex? Is it the paper and brown inside, black outside?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because it can be a bear to work with. I know. Some difference if you use an anvil and a hammer and very lightly tap on it, it does stretch a bit.
The circumference stretches?
Yeah, as you flatten it, it gets a little bit wider as well as longer.
Okay, maybe a ball peen or?
Yeah, well, no, just a flat hammer on a flat surface, very gently, you know, the half an inch in, you know.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I wondered about that, but I tried it and without going to extremes. I couldn't get it on the Audi.
It is the 4-inch hose.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe your cold air box is not an original size.
Well, you must have had this working before though, Ted, didn't you?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's been falling off for years.
Okay.
Also, does anybody know any way to put an air filter on this device? I can't think of anything.
We used to buy a filter from K&N that went on the forward end of the 4-inch tube. It was like a conical filter that came with a 4-inch adapter. You just put it straight into the end of the tube.
K&N? I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
A question, would using a like a hair dryer on the end of the hose and really get it hot to help it stretch and get it over?
No, it's made of paper. It won't change.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
They burn it down.
Plus, I think it's a wire inside, which might not stretch so well. All right, I'll give it a try. That K&N thing, I'll look at that because that's always kind of bothered me.
So Dave, this is the picture you were talking about, right? With that tube on the manifold?
Yes, Pete, yep. So those tubes are right on top of the intake manifold. As you can see on this picture, you know, the drains on the right-hand side there, the nubs are there. So these cables, I'm calling cables, tubes are coming off the top of it. So I don't know, I just don't, you know, we don't have those, it's not on my BJ8, so I don't know what those tubes are for. But again, it's just an intake I have kicking around in the basement for 20 plus years. And it's, you know, if somebody needs it, wants it, it's theirs.
Put it in the will, Dave.
Yeah, okay.
I believe that's where the wolf whistle attaches.
Oh, so helpful.
Okay. Well,
okay.
Thanks, Dave. Any other questions?
I have a question about towing a Healey on a dolly. So the back wheels would be on the ground, like you used to tow it back in the day. Has anybody ever tried it? And what do we think about the idea?
So Steve, I don't know if you remember in Newport, we had one of our members came down from Vermont with the Sprite on a dolly. He backed it onto the dolly. So he had his front tires and he had them locked down, but he backed it on there and he drove it down from Vermont. He does it regularly, but that was with a Sprite.
I had always thought that it was bad for the overdrive. It didn't get lubricated properly.
Well, again, so what this is a Sprite doesn't have an overdrive, but he backed the car.
Yeah, he just rolled, his front tires were rolling. You know, I don't know. I remember when I restored the car back in the 70s, the first restoration, I towed it up from Philadelphia on behind a car. So all 4 tires are on the ground, up to New Jersey. So couple of 100 miles, 100 mile. But, with the transmission in neutral, all the gears would be turning, right? And splashing oil all around. I don't know where the pressure comes from.
No, when you're in neutral, the overdrive pump is running. So you'll be pumping oil through everything. It'll be lots of oil circling around.
See, that's what I thought, because it's all mechanical. It's not powered in any way.
I've towed a car like that on a flatbed, on a dolly. The only problem we have was the rear suspension on this car was pretty low, so the exhaust pipe was really tight to the ground. That was our difficulty. It's all right, you got a BJ8 that sits up in the back a bit, but Roadsters not so much.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I've never tried it. And I just wondered.
You're gonna tow the car to Florida, Steve?
No, you know, I was just thinking I might want to tow it out to the Encounter in Hershey
Okay.
rather than driving on 78.
Yeah.
Ken Beck knows the last time I drove my car out to the Hershey show, I got as far as Ken's shop and dark at night, and my generator died, and Ken saved me with his trailer, and that's when I converted everything over to the alternator and you know, negative ground. But shit, that was probably 10 years ago. But I just wondered about it. I know someone with a dolly, and I just wondered if anybody had any experience. So thanks, Michael. It's nice to know.
Pete, I guess
My opinion is if you're gonna do that, remove the drive shaft.
Why?
Because your transmission won't turn.
No, they just said, Ken, that on a BJ8 or a Healey with overdrive, when you're towing it, the overdrive pump is running. So it's pumping oil all through the transmission all the time, stacks of oil.
So you're saying it shouldn't be a problem, Michael?
No, it would be no problem. Automatics don't like it so much.
Yeah, automatics have a different pump system.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess if you're going to tow anyway, why not just go to U-Haul and get a car trailer? That's what I did when I brought mine out to Pennsylvania. The only thing you had to watch out for is because the car's so low, I did end up putting a new exhaust system on it.
Right.
After that. But I mean, if you're going to tow the car, I mean, just having it sit on a trailer is the easiest thing to me and less abusive and no problems at all. But
Well, I would agree with you, but then you know, getting the U-Haul trailer or renting a trailer is not a problem. But then you have to have a vehicle that you can tow it with.
Yeah.
So now you need, you know, some kind of a big SUV, and U-Haul doesn't like Ford Explorers. If you ever tried to rent a U-Haul with a Ford Explorer, there was a problem. Somebody had a bad accident, and they're kind of outlawed, or they were.
I had a Dodge pickup at the time and had no problem hauling it, but I got to think that it's just as difficult to be towing a car that's already still hooked up, and it must be even easier on whatever the tow vehicle is going to be towing a trailer. I mean, I would just assume that, but I may be wrong.
You know, I have a Ford Edge, and I would not tow anything with a Ford Edge in a trailer. But you know, the dolly I thought would be fine because, you know, it has a surge brake, and most of the weight of the tow vehicle is pretty much on the ground, the four wheels. I'm probably going to drive it anyway. I just haven't, you know, other than Michael's, it's not a problem. And my experience flat towing it, I haven't had a lot of like, yeah, do it experience from anyone. So we'll do the drive out to Harrisburg or Hershey. It shouldn't be a problem. But thanks, guys. It's a good conversation piece.
Yep. Thanks, Steve. So let me give you guys, I'll share one more thing. So just kind of give you some updates of things that are going on. So next Monday, on Monday the 17th at 7 p.m. we're having Rick Neville's leading our AHBS call with Roger Moment. And some of those, I know we've talked about in the past, but Roger Moment has this recent book that he's published on tips on maintenance and repair. So Nick, did you have any luck finally getting your book?
Yeah, everything's fine. And There's just something in the paperwork that got screwed up, and I think one person thought the other guy mailed it, and the other guy thought the other guy mailed it, and it said, who's on first, you know? So
Okay, good.
it's fine. It's sitting right here on the counter.
Good to hear. So again, so this is next Monday night, 7 o'clock is our AHBS call with Roger Moment. Thanks for Rick Neville for coordinating that. Those of you who live in Massachusetts, at Patriots Place, starting on the 20th of April, they have those cruise nights. So that starts on April 20th and then May 4th and May 18th. So it's every other Thursday night is those cruise nights. Then coming up also on April 29th, we talked about this earlier, but British Body and Coach Works. This is where Dave Bevan is having his car restored up in Fitzwilliam, New Hampshire. It's an open house there that Mark LeBlanc is hosting us there. So looking forward to that on the 29th. Then we have on May 7th, Sunday, May 7th, we are having our club's 48th anniversary birthday party. And so that's going to be at the Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Mass. We are limited to 56 people. So if you're interested in going to that, make sure you get your reservation in by April 29th to Linda Hakala. We do have the menu out there for that. So those are some of the things that we've got going on. So I keep the homepage on the website, I keep current, and it's in chronological order. Bruce, do you want to talk about what's coming up with the Sand and Dunes tour on May 10th and 11th?
Thanks, Peter. We have about a dozen people now that have expressed an interest in this tour. We will be leaving from the Cape Cod Canal and driving to Woods Hole through Falmouth. And we have several people that will be staying overnight in the Hampton Inn right on the Cape Cod Canal, which is virtually next door to where the tour starts. And a beautiful brand new Hampton Inn hotel. And we also have several people who are going to be staying at the Coonamessett Inn in Falmouth. And if we get enough interest, we will get Coonamessett to put on a dinner on the night of the 10th. The tour is scheduled now to take place on the 10th. There will be people staying over, as I said, the night before the tour on the 9th at the canal, and staying over in the 10th at the Coonamessett Inn in Falmouth. And anybody interested in doing this, please get in touch with me so that we can make appropriate reservations. And this is a rain or shine event, and it's not restricted to Healy's. We certainly would like to see a good turnout of the Austin-Heelys, but if you are not up and running at that time and would like, this is a beautiful time to be on the Cape. It's a little before the rush hour, and some of the hotel pricing is quite good compared to what it is during the what they call the high season on the Cape. So we're hoping to have good weather. It's certainly, Jane and I have been down and driven the tour on several occasions, and there are some nice roads and there's some interesting architecture, some sand dunes and salty air to see, and we encourage you to come along and join us. And the only other thing a little bit different is that for anybody who's living in northern Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, the Brit Bits has their lift day on May 6th. Anybody that's interested in that sort of thing, they do open up their shop and they will put your car up on the lift and take a look at it for you. And it's a good way to get the season off and see whether you have any gremlins under there that you can't see from the top of the car. So that's what I have. And like I said, I hope we see good turnout for the Cape Cod tour.
So Bruce, if you have those details for Brit Bits, send that to me and I'll add it to the website.
I will. Yep.
Okay. And again, so hopefully you've noticed now that the Hen, our Healy Exhaust Notes, the monthly magazine or monthly newsletter, excuse me, is going to be published the first of each month. So if you do have any new content or anything that you'd like to have included and added in there, please get that to Samantha O'Donnell, by the 15th of each month. And that way she'll make sure to get that in, that we published on the first of the following month. So any other questions or comments that people have, recommendations before we close tonight?
Hey, Peter.
Hi, Nick.
Just one point on the Haggerty insurance. That 5% discount is only on the liability portion of your premium, not comprehensive and the car club and all that other stuff.
Thanks, Nick, for the clarity on that. Yep. Okay. So, well, thank you all for the great questions tonight, and hopefully even you. So, Carl J, hopefully you enjoyed tonight's call, and we hope to see you again. And so we do this the second Monday of each month, and we appreciate the folks like Mike Salter and Ken Beck and others who join and provide expertise, even though they're not directly part of the New England Club, but we certainly appreciate all of their support. This, and again, this is open to anyone that would like to be part of this, and we appreciate it. I think we had ended up with 32 or so on the call tonight, so we will post this out on the website in the members only section. So if you have any questions as it relates to anything, you can always go back. And so again, our next call will be on the second Monday of May, and we got that next AHBS call with Roger Moment next Monday, 7 o'clock, same time. So thank you all. And obviously with this great weather talked about this week, so hopefully get some chance to get your cars out and enjoy them. And Rob Moore will get everything sorted out with his carburetor system. And we look forward to the time when we see Rob's car running.
Me
driving.
Me too.
Well, we appreciate you keeping us running along there, Rob, with the progress you're making.
No, I appreciate the help.
Okay. Good night, everyone. Take care.
Good night, Peter.
Good night.
Thanks for your help.
Peter.
Great
Yeah.
job.
Thanks all.